Alright, for this section you're gonna need two things. You're gonna need everything we've got here, and it's not as bad as it looks. I know it looks like a lot, but it's not that bad. We're gonna particularly worry about these two, and then you're gonna need the unit circle, which I'm gonna upload this again with this assignment. But the reason we're gonna use this is because all of these different units or these different ordered pairs are going to give you everything you're going to need for these. So it's going to make life easier on you. So you are welcome. All right. So we're going to look at sum and difference of angle identities. So this is called sum of angles, difference of angles. And basically what we do here is if we know A plus B, sine of A plus B, we can break it down like this. We can take it and make it sine of A times cosine of B plus cosine of A times sine of B. And the reason you're going to use your unit circle is because sine of A, whatever that A is, you're just going to be able to come over here, and the unit circle is going to tell you what sine of A is, essentially. So you're not going to have to do a bunch of calculations. We're going to use the unit circle, and it's going to tell you everything you need. Then cosine is cosine of A times cosine of B minus sine A times sine B. So those two change a little bit. Then sine and cosine when we're looking at difference of angles. So when it's minus here, which I'm probably going to give you each problem and tell you which one to use because we're not going to do that many. But we're going to do sine of A times cosine of B minus cosine A times sine B. And then cosine is cosine A times cosine B plus sine A times sine B. So it's going to make more sense once we do an example. That's just kind of the general guide you'll need to look at. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to find trig values. Now this is the only thing we're going to focus on. We're going to focus on number 1 and number 2. So we're not going to do anything else. This is kind of the basics of this. That way when you get into the next math, you'll be able to do these. So what we're going to do is focus on degrees and setting these up, and then using the unit circle as well. That way you can be familiar with it. So, number 1. So with these, you're going to notice that you could actually do a sum of angles or a difference of angles if you wanted to, I guess. But for number 1, when it's a positive number, it's going to probably be easier to use the different or the sum of angles, just because it's a little bit easier to think of two numbers to add together rather than thinking of two numbers to subtract. So here's what we're going to do. Our goal is to find the exact value of sine of 165 degrees. Now, what we're going to do is first of all, break 165 up into something, which we can call A, plus something else, which we can call B. Then that's going to allow us to use, since it's sine, it's going to allow us to use this. So we want to use two numbers that are going to add together to give us 165, and we're going to try to use numbers that are on this unit circle. For instance, we could use 135 and 30 degrees. So the reason we want to use numbers on this unit circle is because if we have those degrees, we can use these ordered pairs to give us sine and cosine, and I'll show you how. So first, let's just write down sine of 135 plus 30. So that's the same thing as A plus B. Now, if we know that, we can break this down into sine. So if we want to label 135A and we want to label 30B, then we're going to break this down into sine of A, which would be sine of 135, plus, or actually I think it's times next. Let me look. Yeah, so it's sine of A times cosine of B. So we're going to say sine of A times cosine b, which b is going to be 30, plus cosine of a, which a is 135, times sine of b, which is going to be sine 30. Now, I know that looks long and it looks crazy, but it's going to be really easy with the unit circle, I promise. So all we did here was take sine of 165 and break it down to sine of 135 plus 30. Now, since we use 135 and 30, we can use our unit circle to help us figure out what sine of 135 is and cosine of 30 is, and then cosine 135 and sine of 30. So here's how you do it. So if we go back to the unit circle, down at the very bottom, it tells us that cosine is a or x, sine is y. That means if we go to the ordered pair for 30 degrees, then let me get my color straight. All right, so if we go to the ordered pair for 30 degrees, it's right here. The first coordinate is x, or that first coordinate is cosine. So that means that cosine of 30 degrees would be radical 3 over 2. And then sine of 30 degrees is the y coordinate. So that means that sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. So here's all you have to do. Go to your go to everything we just wrote out, which is pretty much the sum of angles for sine. And the first part we have is sine 135. So you're going to go to 135 and you're going to look at the y coordinate. So the y coordinate here is square root of 2 over 2. So that is what sine of 135 is equal to. This is equal to the square root of 2 over 2. Then we're going to have that multiplied by cosine of 30 degrees. So cosine of 30 degrees is the x coordinate of 30 degrees in our unit circle, which is square root of 3 over 2. So you're going to write square root of 3 over 2 next. So those are going to be multiplied by each other. Then we're going to have plus, which is just rewriting this, plus cosine of 135. So let's go to 135. Cosine is the x coordinate. So negative square root of 2 over 2 is what we'll write next. Then we're going to have multiplied by sine of 30 degrees. So 30 degrees, we're looking for sine. Sine is the y coordinate. That's 1 over 2. So 1 over 2. Now it's just simply multiplying fractions, and then we're going to group it all together. So if we take these two fractions and multiply them, we're just multiplying across the top. So the square root of 2 times the square root of 3 is just the square root of 6. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So we'll have the square root of 6 over 4 plus, now we're taking negative square root of 2 times 1. So that's going to give us negative square root of 2. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So you can do one of two things. You could leave your answer like this, or you may see it written all together. So since these have the same denominator, you could write both of them over 4, and it would be the square root of 6 minus square root of 2 over 4. Because all we did there was take square root of 6 plus negative 2, which is just minus radical 2, and just group them together because we have the same denominator. So that's all you have to do. It's that simple whenever you use the unit circle. So make sure you have this written down, because I'm going to erase it so I can do number 2. All right, so number 2. Can I please erase, or am I crazy? Oh, it doesn't want to erase. All right, thank you. All right, so we'll look at number 2. So number 2, we're going to use the difference or difference of angles. And it's not really much different. It's kind of the same process. All right, so if we look at cosine of negative 75, what we want to do is we want to break this apart into something minus something. And we want to use two numbers that are going to be on the unit circle because we can use our unit circle and the ordered pairs to give us sine and cosine of whatever our values are going to be. So if we want to use two numbers, we could use 45 and 120, I believe. Yeah. Because 45 minus 120 is going to be negative 75. And then we're just going to bring down cosine. So now we've set up a difference of our angles, or a difference of angles, and now we're going to be focusing on the cosine difference of angles identity. Because now we have cosine of A minus B, and in this case, A would be 45. So this would be A, and this would be B. Now, all we have to do is write out the identity for it, which is cosine of A. So we're going to have cosine 45 degrees. What's next? Times cosine B, which is 120. And actually, let me move all this over because I'm going to run out of room. All right. So equal to cosine A, which is 45, times cosine B, which is 120. All right. Then we're going to subtract. No, we're going to add. So in sine, you subtract, but in cosine, you add. So it's add sine of A, which is just going to be plus sine 45. And then we're going to multiply that by sine of B, which is just sine of 120. Now, you're going to use your unit circle, and you're going to find each of these. So first we have cosine of 45. So we're going to go to 45 degrees on our unit circle and then go to your ordered pair. So the x-coordinate is cosine, the y-coordinate is sine, which in this case they're both the same, so it really doesn't matter. But cosine is always going to be the x-coordinate. So the cosine of 45 degrees is going to be square root of 2 over 2. So this is the square root of 2 over 2 times. Now we're going to look at cosine 120. So if we look for cosine 120, we're going to go 120 and look at the x-coordinate. So negative 1 over 2 is cosine of 120. So negative 1 over 2. And those two are going to be multiplied together plus sine of 45 degrees. So we're going to go back to 45 degrees. Now we're going to look at the y-coordinate, and it's negative, or it's square root of 2 over 2. So square root of 2 over 2 times sine of 120. So we're going to go to 120. Look at the y-coordinate. It's square root of 3 over 2. So we've got square root of 3 over 2. And we're going to multiply those two. So the reason I'm putting brackets around these is just so you know to multiply these two and these two before you do your addition or your subtraction. So I always put brackets around those just to remind myself, or else I'll forget and I'll start doing some crazy stuff. All right, so if we're multiplying these two fractions, it's just like multiplying any two fractions. So the square root of 2 times negative 1 is just negative. Actually, I'm going to put this down here. So negative square root of 2. So negative square root of 2. And then 2 times 2 is 4. So that's going to be over 4. Plus radical 2 times radical 3 is radical 6 over 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So it's over 4. So then you could leave it as this, or you'll see it written, since these have the common denominator 4, you'll see it written as negative square root of 2 plus 6, or plus square root of 6, and both of those over 4. Because you can add these together, but you can't like add them to where you'll actually get something. So it just stays negative square root of 2 plus square root of 6. But you can put it all over the same denominator. And that's all we're going to do for this. So those are two examples. That's an example of a sum of angles and a difference of angles. Your homework's going to be pretty straightforward, and we're probably going to go back over it when we get back in class. So if you have any questions, just email me, and that will be it for this video.